Thank you. So we're often asked to think outside of the box. But for a brain scientist, the brain is the box. And so sometimes it really helps when you're trying to study humans to think like an alien. Now, I want you all in the audience tonight to think like aliens with me. I'm going to conduct a little experiment, and I promise no alien abductions. I just need everybody in the audience to raise their left arm up. Thank you. Excellent job. The experiment is over. Well, if you think that this was dull or boring, it's probably because you were still thinking like a human. But if you were thinking like an alien, you'd be amazed at how the thought that came to your mind changed into action. You'd ask yourself questions like, what is thought to begin with? How does it transform into action? Where does this happen in the brain? And what can possibly go wrong? And they are exactly these questions that make neuroscience search for the answers. And some of the answers we found out, I want to share with you tonight. Some of them you already know, but I hope I'll add a couple of new things. Well, first, you all know that we have two halves of our brain. One is blue and one is red. Just kidding, they're both blue, of course. So anyway, in front of a little crack that you have in your brain, there's what we call the motor area, or the primary motor cortex. And this is basically the part that's responsible for the movement of the opposite side of the brain. But even before this area, there's what we call the supplementary motor area, which is basically sort of an intention center, because this is where all the planning takes place. So whenever you only think of an action or imagine a certain movement, this area is the first part to light up. And when there's good communication between your intention center and your motion center, your thought turns into action. So what could possibly happen if there was a disconnection between your intention and your motion? Well, in this case, something which is quite amazing happens. A very strange condition arises in which the person feels as if their hands, their arms, have acquired a mind of their own. And that specifically happens in the left arm, the one that you so easily raised a while ago. And patients with this condition believe that their arms are behaving on their own. And often when they're engaged in really serious stuff, like talking to an amazing crowd like you guys, they would discover that their arms are actually moving on their own. And they would sometimes never realize what's going on until they see the results of their action. And this could be very embarrassing, especially when they're being judged. Anyway, this sort of thing is exactly what makes neuroscience so amazing, because it tells us so much about our very free will and our consciousness. And there are people like that who have to struggle every day just to make sense of why their bodies are behaving the way they do. That makes us, the healthy people, have to think more of why we go around in our lives feeling completely indifferent to how amazing our brain works. So I really think it's a good idea from time to time to sit back from your life, enjoy how amazing it is, and think like an alien. Thank you.
Hazem, a lovely talk, really enjoyed it. You've got a lovely fluid style. Just one question, which has sort of puzzled me over the years. Why does one side of the brain control one side of the body? Surely it makes more sense the same side of the brain controls that side of the body. Why is that?
Wow. Well, I think it has to do an evolutionary function, but I think if this wasn't the case, if there wasn't this crossover, we'd probably end up with two people controlling the brain, because through this crossing over, a bridge forms between the two brains, and that facilitates a very fluid communication. Without that bridge, you'd basically have two completely unrelated people controlling the body.
Well, that's a good reason we keep them separate then, isn't it? Yeah, that's definitely a good reason to keep them separate.
Okay, Hazem, I'm really wondering what got you into brain science to start with? Was it something that you were as a kid wondering about, or just came by chance?
Yes, actually, when I was a kid, I always asked myself these crazy questions that probably you guys asked, but rightfully managed to ignore. But I was asking myself questions like, why do I see red color, specifically red, and how do I know that you are seeing it the same way I do? And this sort of questions has a lot of research going on in neuroscience, and that's exactly why I wanted to know why consciousness works the way it does.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Hazem.
Thank you.